What's going on, everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be taking an updated look at the all-new Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. So since my initial review, it's been about 30 days at the time of this video going live. So obviously I've had a lot of time to spend with this device, and recently I noticed that a lot of people started getting their shipments in for their Retroid Pocket 4 or the 4 Pro, so I figured I'd go ahead and do my full review here. And so far, it's been a great little handheld for Android gaming, cloud gaming, PC streaming, and especially emulation. First things first, love the form factor. Not much has changed from the Pocket 3 or the Pocket 3 Plus. We've got a very small design. It is pocketable, hence the name Retroid Pocket, but we've got a massively upgraded CPU and GPU combo here. Around back, we do have analog linear triggers, and the throw here is really nice, comes in very handy for racing games. The whole unit is constructed of plastic, so obviously it feels like a plastic device, but we do have Hall-based analog sticks up here. These are the smaller analog sticks, and really due to the size constraints of the handheld itself, they had to go with these smaller ones, but they work out really well. Buttons, bit smaller than some other handhelds, it hasn't bugged me at all. And when it comes to the D-pad, it actually works out quite well for this. It's using dome switches underneath it. I kinda wish it was a bit larger. Now they do have a bit more room here to go with a larger D-pad. It does feel a bit smaller to me, but there's no doubt it's actually a pretty decent D-pad here for fighting games and platformers. And this does come with 128 gigabytes of internal storage, but we do have a micro SD card slot on the bottom, along with USB Type-C. And on the 4 Pro version, USB Type-C down here does support video out, plus we've got a 3.5mm audio jack for plugging in your headphones. And of course, it definitely is a smaller handheld, so if you've got larger hands, it might feel a bit cramped. But luckily, it's very, very light, so you can actually kind of offset that by not holding it so tightly. Usually, I like these handhelds when they rest in my palm, but when we're working with something with more of a cramped controller layout, it's a bit hard to do that with bigger hands. When it comes to the screen here, I think it looks really good for the type of handheld we have. It's a 4.7-inch IPS with up to 500 nits of brightness and a resolution of 1334 by 750. It is a 60 Hz panel, but it's not a top-of-the-line IPS or AMOLED or anything like that. Either way, for the price, I think they did a good job choosing this display here. And first and foremost, this is an Android handheld. As you can see, we've got a basic Android layout, full access to Google Play right out of the box. You can always disable this if you don't want any Google installed. But I personally like using a different launcher. I've always used the TV Pro launcher here. Just makes it really easy to get through all of my standalone games and standalone emulators. But they've also included their own emulation front end built in, which is very, very easy to set up. It's a bit more basic than others on Google Play, and you could always install a third-party emulation front end if you wanted to, but this will definitely get you by. Again, very easy to set up, kind of gives you a walkthrough once you boot it up for the first time. You can install everything on the internal storage or a micro SD card. It'll scan, download all of your box art, metadata for the games. You can set up standalone emulators or RetroArch, it's really up to you. And to tell you the truth, I really haven't even set up a second or a third-party emulation front end on this. I've personally just been using their built-in Retroid launcher here. So basically, if you're going to get into one of these handhelds here and you're used to Android, you're going to be right at home. It's basically an Android device with controllers attached. And with this newer version, we've got a much more powerful CPU and GPU. Now that's the next thing I wanted to talk about, just overall performance here. This is powered by the MediaTek Dimensity 1100. We've got an 8-core CPU here, 4 A78 cores running at 2.6 GHz, and 4 A55 cores running at 2 GHz, plus the GPU is a Mali G77 MC9 up to 836 MHz. In terms of how much more power it has than the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, I did run some benchmarks on both the devices. Plus, I wanted to throw the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 in here just to give you a little bit of reference, because the 8 Gen 1 phones used or unlocked on eBay are getting pretty cheap, and you can always build your own emulation or gaming device if you wanted to. So what I did here was run Antutu on all of these devices. The Pocket 3 Plus coming in with a 231,476, and keep in mind that has the Unisoc T618 CPU. When it comes to the Pocket 4 Pro, we got a 727,387, and on the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 with sufficient cooling, you can get over 1,000,000 points with Antutu. But this doesn't tell the whole story because we have individual scores to take a look at, and I just went with overall CPU score and overall GPU score. CPU score on the Pocket 3 Plus, 73,939. Pocket 4 Pro, 216,596. And as you can see, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 is over 300,000 here. And finally, GPU. This is really going to make or break a handheld device when it comes to gaming at higher resolutions or gaming in general with newer 3D games. Pocket 3 Plus, 42,932. Pocket 4 Pro, 225,978. And again, that Snapdragon Gen 1 is beating them both out by quite a bit. So when it comes down to it, I mean, if you were looking to upgrade from the Pocket 3 or the Pocket 3 Plus, it's definitely an awesome upgrade when it comes to CPU and GPU performance for sure. Next thing I wanted to show off was some native Android gaming with this device. And we do have some performance settings that we can utilize here. From the drop down, we've got a balanced mode, performance mode, or high performance mode. And in high performance mode, obviously, you're going to get the best out of this unit. We've also got a couple different fan modes that we can use. Smart, which will adjust it accordingly, or Sport, which does get a bit louder, but obviously it's going to keep it nice and cool. And personally, I leave it in auto mode or smart mode. And they've also added some extra useful features like an on-screen key mapper. We've got an on-screen FPS display. We can clear the memory up from here. Everything you want in a little gaming handheld is in their performance menu, swiping from the side while you're in any game. So the first game we're testing out here is Asphalt 9, just one that I've always gone to. We're maxed out here with the graphics. I think we've got 3 different settings that we can do. So we're in high fidelity mode right now, or the best looking mode, and it's running at 60 FPS. I know it might be a bit hard to see that frame counter on screen, but all of the native Android games that I've tested so far have run really well. Here's Devil May Cry, Peak of Combat. We're at high settings, not the highest. There's actually a lot of graphic settings with this newer one. 60 FPS, and it's running at 60. Another one I tested in my first look video was Genshin Impact. That one's more suited for low or lowest 60, or you could go to medium 30 if you wanted to. I believe in that first video, I also showed off Call of Duty Mobile running, and with something like Genshin Impact, you will have to use that on-screen key mapper until they give us native Android controls for that game, but there's still a lot of games on the market that will support this controller. Here's Diablo Immortal. We're at medium settings, 60 FPS. Not bad at all, and again, I mean, everything that I've tested, native Android games, has run flawlessly on the Pocket 4 Pro. Next thing I wanted to show off was a little bit of cloud gaming. I've tested out GeForce Now, but I figured I'd go with Game Pass here. So if you have a subscription to Game Pass, you can always use their Xbox Cloud Gaming. I think that's what they're calling it. The Retroid Pocket 4 Pro does have Wi-Fi 6 built in, so streaming from your local PC is definitely a treat, and it's kind of hit or miss with cloud gaming on any device. Some days it might work better than others, but I mean, we've got more than enough here with this device to handle it as long as there's servers and your internet connection is going to allow you to stream properly. So yeah, Retroid Pocket 4, game streaming, cloud gaming, Android gaming, awesome, but one of the main reasons somebody's going to pick one of these up is for emulation. In this video, we're not going to be testing the lower end stuff. This is going to run all of your NES, Neo Geo, Game Boy Advance. It's going to do DS. It'll do N64 without an issue, even upscaled. So what I wanted to show off was some GameCube, Wii, PSP, and some PS2. Here's GameCube using the Dolphin emulator. And with this, you do get something known as Dolphin Handheld. So it's a modified version of the Dolphin emulator. And in some cases, the original or the official Dolphin build may work better. But I went through and tested a bunch of games with Dolphin Handheld because this actually allows you to downscale a little more. I'm actually at 0.6x resolution, and with a lot of these games it does help out. Given that we've got a smaller, lower resolution screen, doesn't look too bad on here, downscaled just a bit under native. But yeah, so far I've actually had a pretty decent time with GameCube using the Dolphin emulator. A lot of the Wii games that I like to play with a controller also function very well, but it doesn't mean that it's going to run every single GameCube game at full speed. Real quick, here's some Wii. We've got Sonic Colors. This natively ran at 30 FPS. Using the Vulkan backend with this one. Another one I tested was Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. That's kind of one of my go-to fighting games, always has been. And it does run at full speed here, 0.6x resolution using the Vulkan backend. But when I moved over to F-Zero GX, didn't have great luck. So I went through and I tested this with Dolphin Handheld and the official build. It actually seemed like the official build worked a little better, but I captured footage with the handheld version. Either way, sometimes you're at full speed, sometimes when there's lots of particles, lots of characters on screen, you'll see it kind of dip down. It is a bit hit or miss when it comes to Gamecube emulation on the Dimensity 1100. But one thing this actually really shines at is PSP emulation. Given the form factor here, this definitely works out really well. Vulkan backend, 4x resolution using the standalone version of PPSSPP. Sega Rally Revo originally ran at 30 FPS. There are ways to unlock this, but I just left it right there at 30. 4x, not a problem to run this. Even the harder to emulate games that struggle on lower-end handhelds and chipsets run at full speed. Here's Chains of Olympus, Vulkan backend. I dropped it down to 3x resolution. We're not using any kind of modifications in the background, no frame skip or anything like that. So if you're looking for a good PSP handheld, the Pocket 4 Pro definitely has you covered. And the final thing I wanted to take a look at was some PS2 emulation, and this was really impressive. I'm using a modified version of Ether SX2. It's a patched version known as Neether SX2. A little bit of modifications here and there, especially when it comes to controller configurations. But for the most part, a lot of the stuff that I've tested has run at 1x resolution using the Vulkan backend. Kind of just like GameCube and Wii, it still might be a bit hit or miss. But the next one I tested was one of my favorite rally games of all time, Colin McRae Rally 3 for PS2. We're at 1x resolution, running perfectly fine. And it does look good even though we're at 1x on this display. And finally, God of War 2. Now I gotta say that Retroid has pushed out a couple updates since my initial review. One of them was kind of focused on performance and fixing a screen issue they had. It was a little green tinted or blue tinted, however you looked at it. Totally fixed here, and I think performance was definitely up. With the PS2 version of God of War 2, we can run this at full speed, but I did have to drop that resolution down to 0.75x. Another thing I've done some testing on with the Pocket 4 Pro is battery life. So this does have a 5000 milliamp hour battery, and through all of my testing, screen brightness was at 100%. Different performance profiles may have been used here and there, but for NES emulation, which doesn't require being in high performance mode, I got 6 hours and 31 minutes. They do claim that you can get up to 8 hours of battery life out of this, and I could see that with the brightness basically all the way down doing some NES emulation, but for me, with that brightness all the way up, about 6.5 hours. Next up, moved over to some Android gaming. 4.5 hours. This is actually a mix between Shredder's Revenge, Devil May Cry, and Dead Cells. Balanced performance profile, and maxed out here with PS2 emulation. High performance mode, fan set to sport, 2 hours and 8 minutes for PS2, and that's at 1x resolution. Really putting a strain on that CPU and GPU, but overall this really isn't that bad. And again, like I mentioned, they do claim up to 8 hours. I could see it with low-end stuff on this, low power mode, and brightness all the way down. So yeah, I think Retroid has knocked it out of the park with the 4 Pro, and again, I haven't been able to test the regular 4 model. This is coming in at $199. They do have several different colors to choose from, but going into this, you gotta understand that it's gonna be hit or miss with GameCube, Wii, and PS2. It's not an end-all, be-all device when it comes to emulation or even native Android gaming maxed out with everything, but it's definitely a major upgrade when it comes to a lot of the other retro handhelds on the market right now. I could definitely recommend the Retroid Pocket 4 Plus to a lot of people out there as long as you know exactly what you're getting into. But then again, you got to keep in mind, if you've already got an Android phone in your pocket with, let's say, a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 or even higher, you've got something that's really going to outperform this, and you can always add a Bluetooth or a USB Type-C controller to that said device. So in the end, it's really up to you. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you've got any questions or you want to see anything else running on the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, let me know down below. And if you're interested in learning a little more, I'll leave some links in the description. But like always, thanks for watching.